Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Gems Podcast. For those of you that are new to the community, I am Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp, the founder and host. For those newbies, welcome in. You're in for a treat. With me today in the hot seat is Kaila Maguire, and we are going to be dishing up things about postpartum, motherhood, and all that jazz. But before we do, let me tell you a little bit more about who Kaila is. Get ready, get ready, get ready. So, Kaila Maguire is a teacher turned stay at home parent turned podcaster and birth educator who lives in Northern Virginia with her family. After going through pregnancy and the fourth trimester, Kaila started Parent Tell, a podcast dedicated to sharing all types of pregnancy and parenting experiences, but particularly those that are not yet discussed enough in mainstream. Whoop, whoop. Through her podcast, Kaila provides a safe and inclusive space to parents and tell about. Yes, because we want to hear the whole tea. It is Kaila's hope that candid conversations about birth, postpartum, and the mental load of parenting, to name a few, will help to normalize the often hard to discuss realities of raising a child, resulting in more support, grace, and acknowledgement of and for parents. Kaila recently became a certified birth educator and is now offering birth classes through her new venture, Not Your Mama's Birth Class. Classes are available in person in the DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia area, as well as virtually. Yes, Kaila is excited about these classes as they are honest, detailed, and aim to empower birthing people and their partners. So without further ado, let's welcome the woman behind it all, Kaila Maguire.
I think that was the best intro I've ever had. And that was also the first time I think I've heard my bio read out loud. Like that was just so great. So thank you.
My pleasure. And I'm so happy to be spilling the tea with you. So, one thing that I like to do is allow my guests to connect personally and professionally with the audience. So, I do that by one or two ways on my show. We could either do a rapid fire 10 question game, emphasis on rapid, or an icebreaker. What are you in the mood for?
Let's do rapid fire. I think that's so fun.
Here we go. We're playing rapid fire with Kaila and Genesis. Do 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 do. Question one: what's one thing you wish somebody would have told you about becoming a mom?
Sometimes you're really going to hate it, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you hate your child. You just hate how hard all of it is.
Question two: favorite color.
Black.
Question three: favorite food.
French fries.
Question four: if you could trade places with anyone, would you trade places or remain yourself?
Oh, I would remain myself.
Question five: what's one piece of advice you would go back in time and give your younger self?
Whew. um, it's okay not to be okay. Such a cliche, but it's okay not to be okay.
Six: the vibes are nice. You're in your car, you're blasting out your favorite song. What are you blasting out to?
Honestly, I'm probably playing my labor and delivery playlist, which I still play from time to time. It's a lot of Tupac on there. There's a lot of Missy, a lot of Mariah. So I'm really listening to that all the time.
Oh my gosh, I have to hit you with this question. Question seven: what is your favorite Tupac song?
um, oh my gosh. It might be I Ain't Mad at You. That's just like, I hear that song, do, 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 and I'm just like, I'll stop everything I'm doing.
Oh my gosh, I like the one song. I think it's Dear Mama where it says, "Doesn't it feel good putting money in your mailbox, paying the rent when the rent's due? I hope you got the diamond necklace that I sent to you."
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Now that I'm a mama, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I could resonate with this. I want somebody to put a diamond necklace in my mailbox and pay not pay my rent, pay my mortgage when my mortgage is due."
Yeah, I sometimes joke, and my son, he's 2.5, he loves baseball. And I'm like, yep, that's right. Let's go. Let's get a career going. Buy me a house. Absolutely. Like, not that you owe it to me, but like, I'll take it.
So I think we're on question 8, right? Keep me honest
Yes.
here. So question 8, would you rather a dream car, dream home, or hell? Let's go big and have both.
I'd rather have a dream home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Question 9. If you could have lunch or dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be?
Um, Robin Williams.
Oh, he is hilarious. Well, he was hilarious. And when you said
Yes.
Robin Williams, I thought about the movie RV.
So, fun fact, my son is actually named Robin. He's not named after Robin Williams, but it is just like a nice perk because he was one of my favorite actors.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
question 10. Boom, boom. Here are the rules. So, if you pass, our roles are reversed and you get to ask me any question. If you play, I ask one last question to wrap up rapid fire. So, do you want to pass? We'll play.
Play.
Okay, last question. So, everything is going nice and you found out you hit the lottery. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. However, you must donate to 3 charities of your choice before you get the proceeds released. What charities are you contributing?
I probably am not saying their names right, but I would donate to the biggest charity for animals. Then I would donate to, well, it's not a charity. I would donate to Planned Parenthood. And then I would donate to a charity that works with domestic violence victims.
Amazing. And now we have wrapped up rapid fire and the connection part of our segment. So, audience, I hope you learned a little bit more about Kaila Maguire. Now we're going to dive into the meat and potatoes of our segment. And yes, I call it meat and potatoes because I'm a Southern belle and I love to eat. So, the meat and potatoes, we're going to spend time talking about postpartum, parenthood, and motherhood because it is a hell of a journey, but it's worthwhile once you see and hold your precious bundle of joy, or if you have multiple bundles of joy. So, Kayla, let's talk about postpartum here. So, you have a 2-year old. So, do you a 2-year old son? I have a 4-month old daughter, and we have both been down this birthing process. And some people didn't even realize that the fourth trimester is a thing.
Mm.
And there's baby blues, there's postpartum depression, and sometimes people aren't really sure if they're having the baby blues or if they're dealing with postpartum depression. So, can you give us a glimpse into how you handled your fourth trimester and what was that like for you?
Sure. So, early postpartum was really, really hard for me. I keep having to remind myself at this point because it was 2.5 years ago, and our brains love to protect us and help us forget things. But I did give birth to my son in May 2020, so of course everybody's doing the math there. It was prime pandemic, and that in itself was traumatic. And then having a baby in general was a huge transition. So early postpartum was really hard for me. I thankfully I made myself very aware before I gave birth of the signs of postpartum depression, and I kind of educated myself about what the baby blues were. And I am already predisposed to depression, anxiety because I do suffer from that just in my regular life and pre-pregnancy. And so I told my husband, if I ever seem really off to you, like, please, because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And I told him, please, like, help me and, gently talk to me and say that maybe we need to go see someone. Um, Baby blues, it needs to be giving a different name. Like, that name isn't accurate, but I would say it's like a hormone drop off. That's like a better yes, where you're just like, they kick you off a cliff and they're like, bye, best of luck to you for the next 2 weeks. Um, I had a crying chair. That's what I called it. My son's like rocker in or glider in his room for the first 6 days, like at least once a day, just sobbing in that chair. And I remember knowing, like, okay, yes, this is baby blues. But also at the same time, you're so caught up in it. And it was just like you're just not okay. You're crying because you're sad. You're crying because you're happy. You're crying because you're frustrated. You're crying because you're never been more sleep deprived in your entire life. So early postpartum, and by early, I would say the first 4 weeks. When I say early, that's what I mean. It was really hard for me, but I did notice around the 10-12 day mark, I wasn't crying as much anymore. And so it was a relief to know that, okay, that I do only, quote, only have baby blues, and it is starting to go away. Later on in my journey, probably around the 11-month mark, 10-month mark, I realized that I had postpartum anxiety, actually. Yeah, and that was something I previously was unaware of that even existed, because that's something that no one talks about either. So that's kind of a different answer. That's for a different question. But yeah, that was my experience. It was really hard, but the baby blues do lift, and it really does behoove you to educate yourself before that baby comes out and know the signs in general of baby blues versus something like postpartum depression.
And thank you for sharing your personal journey, because sometimes we as women and mothers, sometimes we don't always want to share what's going on with us because, moms and women in general can be snarky. They like to pass judgment or be like, I would never do that as a mother or whatever.
They're
And
lying.
yes, and and it's hard because your emotions are already high. Your body has changed drastically, whether you had a vaginal birth or a cesarean. So you're dealing with that. And then you see all these people on Instagram and social media. They have, oh, girl, I got that snapback. And I'm like, really? Because I don't think my body just snapped back just like that.
No.
And even though I'm not a larger size woman, I'm very petite, but those stretch marks just don't go away instantly or whatnot. But and you think about it, my body has transformed to carry a beautiful baby, and it's not always going to go back to how it was pre-baby. You go work at it, but if you want a quick fix, of course, yeah, you could go hit up that doctor and fork out a cash load of money. But then there may be complications, and part of that, excuse me, can be part of the baby blues because you're thinking about, lack of sleep. You're thinking about, your body and how your body has transitioned and transformed, which I like to call my TNT, my personal explosives, transitioning and transformation. Then you think about, okay, your spouse, whenever it gets time to, that period where you want to bring sexy back, like JT, you may not feel like being touched because you may be agitated, you're hot, you're cold, and I'm not you're hot, you're cold, and I'm not just talking about the Katy Perry song here. You're just really facing that with, how your body is going through hormonal changes and trying to get recalibrated and balanced again. And then you have people saying, oh, you're depressed, or have you considered having postpartum? But then you already have your physician asking you that when you go for your 6-week follow up at your OB. You have your child's pediatrician asking you to fill out this 10 questionnaire for this system,
Yeah.
to see if you're struggling with postpartum. So everyone is telling you about it. You don't need somebody else passing judgment on you, telling you that you may have postpartum. Number one, if you're not a mother. Number two, if you've never even considered popping something out of you or getting it pulled out of you, I'm going to need you to sit back and stay in your lane. And number three, if you had your kids 30 something years ago, times have changed. Yes, it's still motherhood, but times have changed. So I'm going to need you to respect me and respect my boundaries. And if you're not giving advice that is uplifting me, then just pocket that advice. And whenever I need it, I'll just put a quarter in and you'll spit it out like a little gumball.
Yes, you hit so many good points. I think I have done so much work to like even remove the term bounce back from my vocabulary. Your body is, even if you get, even if you work yourself to the bone, your body's different. And I think a lot of the shift that needs to happen is just accepting that our bodies are different and changing that, like reframing it, that of why wouldn't my body be different? Of course it is. I grew a baby and an organ, and then I birthed both of them. Of course my body is different. Scientifically, once you give birth, your brain chemistry is different. There is proven research that you are not the same person after you gave birth. So why do we expect ourselves to physically look the same after we gave birth if mentally, emotionally, we're not the same person? And it is really hard to come to terms with that, especially when you are bombarded on social media with, whatever they're called these days, like waist cinchers, waist trainers, belly bands, all of that stuff. And it's telling you you're not good enough. You don't want to, like, mom, you want to be a quote cool mom because you want to look like your pre baby self, but you aren't your pre baby self anymore. So you don't need to look like your pre baby self. I unfollowed a fair amount of people shortly after I gave birth and I am always telling people curate your feed. Social media is not terrible, but if you're not mindful of what you're consuming, it can be really harmful to your mental health, especially if you're in a vulnerable period like postpartum. I specifically remember I unfollowed this one girl who gave birth, I think like a month after me, because I was doing this thing where I was comparing my postpartum body to the moms who had given birth around the same time as me. And I remember I unfollowed her shortly after I caught myself thinking, she gave birth after me. Why does she look so much better than me? Why is she skinnier than me? And it took me a while, but eventually I was like, no, this is not good for my mental health. This is not making me feel good. And also, it's not a competition. So I'm just going to go ahead and unfollow people who aren't making me feel good about myself and replace that with something like Tank's Good News or Postpartum Support International, some either like very light good news only feeds or accounts, and then some informational accounts. It really, like, I love social media and I hate it at the same time, because at a time like postpartum, it can be your best friend. It's awake with you at 2 in the morning when you're doing those feeds and you're scrolling. But then it's also in the back of your head when you see so and so who gave birth 3 weeks after you not wearing her pregnancy jeans anymore. Yes. And just like with the perky boobs, first of all, it's all fake. Like, and I don't mean these people are fake. I mean, everyone, as we sit up and like fix our boobs, everyone is curating their pictures to show you them at their best, which is why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't we do that? I think that's great. But you have to remind yourself that it's not real. I mean, like when you and I first got on the Zoom call, I'm like frantically cleaning this side of my desk so people don't see the clutter that I've piled up because, the expectation is that everything is neat and clean and prim and proper and perfect. But you have to remind yourself that if your shit looks whack, the other person's probably does too. We're all just doing a great job of hiding it.
Yes, that part. And what I do now is like I show up to the podcast since I do audio and video. Like today, I have on my Vegas tee, sporting that tee. Under here, I have my nursing and pumping bra, which I will show y'all. I am rocking the Nurse Me Mama
Yes.
bra. So right there, because this is motherhood and we're talking about motherhood series. So I'm okay with being my authentic self because another mom is going to resonate with that. And sometimes you may have to work on your meeting, whether you're a solopreneur or a mompreneur, and you may be pumping and working if you choose to exclusively pump. Or who knows, maybe you're bringing your baby and you're breastfeeding. Or if you're not doing breastfeeding or pumping, maybe you're giving your baby a formula, some formula. You do what works best for you and don't feel mom guilt, shame, or remorse because another mama is doing something else because we are all genetically made up different, but our differences is what makes us a wild card factor. And I'm so glad that you and I here, Kaila, as one mom to another mom, are talking about postpartum and having these honest conversations because our goal is to help other moms feel like they can do it too. No makeup, natural curly hair. Yes, it's laid down because I literally had to brush it before I got on this. Because if not, My hair will be all over the place because it's natural, curly, and it's thick. But this is momhood. Everything is not going to be prim and proper and put together. And like you said, Kayla, if it is put together, it's a filter, or you're only showing us what you want us to see. But then behind, you may be going through or tornado, but your followers think everything is prim, proper, and perfect when you may be crying inside. You may be screaming inside. Why can't we just be real like the song I Woke Up Like This? Or there's a new social media app called Be Real where they're telling people to take snaps and quick videos of what they're doing in that instance because so many people are feeling the societal norms and pressures to act and be a certain way when in actuality is that really you? It's more like being a robot and because you're not showing up as your authentic self and the minute that you keep showing up as somebody else and what they want you to be, is the moment you start to die a little inside.
Yeah, I think the parents and moms who want to be real are going to continue to be real, and you attract what you put out there. And that's a main reason why I started the podcast, because when I became pregnant and I realized, like I saw behind the curtain, I realized that it's not cute all the time. And it can be really difficult to be pregnant. And while people are telling you, oh, but you're so lucky, enjoy every moment, and you're miserable, or you have perinatal anxiety like I did. And I just feel like the more people who can be real, the less isolated other people will feel, because I ended up feeling really isolated because we paint pregnancy as like this picture perfect time, and you're always wearing cute outfits, and you like, oh my God, what? I only gained like 12 pounds. And you're just like, your life doesn't change, or your life isn't impacted at all by a pregnancy. And that's just so far from the truth for not everybody, but for most people, I would argue. And I just realized that I don't want to feel I don't want to feel alone anymore. And more importantly, I don't want other people to feel the isolation and the like just strange vulnerability that I felt. So I'm willing to put myself out there and talk about my stuff and talk about, happy and sad, dark and light, because I know 100% there's always someone who's going to be nodding their head yes and saying, "Oh my God, me too." And now, it's changed to like, "Oh my God, your kid does that too." And I'm like, "Yes, isn't it so annoying?" And that's another way to just feel more normal in parenthood, because parenthood can be really isolating. No matter if you have friends or if you have social media and you have social media friends, at the end of the day, you want to feel like you're doing a good job because you love your kid. And you can't feel like you're doing a good job if you feel alone. So that's really just been my driving reason to, selfishly, I started it because I wanted to feel less alone. And now it's shifted to, I'm like, everybody come on over. Don't be alone. Let's be together.
And I love that because it depicts a sign behind you that says honest parenting only. Because as we know, parenting is a roller coaster ride. There's going to be highs and lows, upside down moments, roundabouts, drops, all of that. But the most important thing is, are you learning every step of the way? Because just like your child is learning you as a parent, you're learning more about your child. You're learning about your spouse because the person that you married back then at the altar or in the courthouse or wherever you got married is not going to be the same person whenever you bring a life into the equation. And there's going to be different seasons that you go through, times where you feel like, oh my gosh, would he just shut the puck up? Or, oh my gosh, like, seriously, dude, or whatever, or seriously, woman, however, because it's hard and it is very, and one parent may be the fun parent, one parent may be the disciplinary
Oh my
parent.
God, I just had this discussion with my husband literally less than a week ago.
And
I'll give you one
yeah.
guess as to who's the fun parent. I'll give you one guess.
Let
It's
me
not
see.
me.
Your husband? Yes.
Yes.
Because I think my husband is trying to be the fun parent too. And I feel like I'm that helicopter mom, but it's like I go to the pediatrician. I do all this stuff. I do all the notes or whatnot.
You're the business. Like
Yeah.
I told him, look, we can't have two fun parents. I get it. Everybody has their role. You can't have two fun parents. You can't, because then you'll get nothing done. It'll be a shit show. You can't have two business parents because then there will be no fun and that kid will be miserable. So I get it. We all have our roles, but it is hard when you're not the fun parent because you do tend to feel you're not fun. You're just focused on the day to day. You're focused on the logistics. And a lot of times it ends up being the primary parent who's the business parent. And unfortunately, fortunately, in our society, we all know it's the mom.
Yes, and boundaries. Let's talk about boundaries because there comes a times whenever you are a mom and a parent as a whole where you have to set a boundaries for the extended family, boundaries for the in-laws, and boundaries for people who are just sticking their nose where you didn't ask them to stick it. And sometimes you want to be like the movie Stick It and just say, "Why don't you just stick it here?" But then you're trying to be respectful and courteous, you know? So you being a mama and you're a little bit further along in the game than me, how do you set up boundaries just to make sure that you are respected, you're seen and you're heard, but then you also know where to let that person lay their stuff, so to speak?
That's a really great question, because it does take time. I will say, like, that's the biggest thing. It takes time as you get further along in your parenting journey and as your child gets older, you do gain this, I used to call it momfidence, your mom confidence, and you learn to care a whole lot less about what other people say, think, and feel. But before you get to that point, before you get there, it is really hard. I feel like in those early months, you are figuring it out. Like you said, the child is learning you and you're learning how to be a parent. It's a really vulnerable time. And unfortunately, if you gave birth 30 years ago, or if you've never given birth, you're not necessarily thinking with that lens. And so comments sometimes will be exchanged, or suggestions, and I'm using air quotes, or advice will be given that is the least helpful thing that someone could say to a new parent. And I actually spent a lot of time. So I'm a big proponent of talk therapy. I talk about it on my show all the time. And setting boundaries, especially with my in-laws, is a topic that my therapist and I talked about often because I had the boundaries, but I didn't have the verbiage to go along with them. So if I was confronted with a scenario, I would just be like so caught off guard. I would end up just kind of going along with it. And then later, like vent to my husband and be like, I can't believe like this is inappropriate. Practice. Like this sounds so dumb, but literally practicing what you're going to say in your head if someone violates a boundary. Like, let's go with like, if someone tells you, like, this is a big one that I used to have to deal with and not anymore because they know now not to ask me. But if someone keeps saying, you need to give that baby a sibling, when are you having another one? So are you going to have another baby? Oh, because I already know you've been asked that. You're only 4 months postpartum. Like you barely left the fourth trimester. And I already know people have asked you that multiple times. People probably asked you that when your baby was 2 weeks old. Like, yep, I already know. So, so that used to be a big issue for me. And part of my issue was that like, I felt so uncomfortable. I would just kind of freeze up. But now I literally practice saying like, my fertility is not open for discussion. Our family is really happy where we are right now. Like key phrases. And again, like my therapist helped me with that. And the more you use them, like it's so uncomfortable the first couple times, but then you feel so good afterwards. And often the person is not expecting you to hold a boundary that they're so thrown off that they immediately drop it because they're not used to people being like, oh no, I'm so sorry. That's really inappropriate. Can you please get out of me and my husband's bedroom? Thanks. Like they're not used to hearing that. And so it'll stop them dead in their tracks. And then you're like, killed it. All right.
I love that, and I'm gonna have to borrow that from you because this right here, this mount gets me in trouble because I'm like, there's a faux pas, there's a word vomit, or there's Genesis. She's going back to BC before Christ. Now I'm trying to say AC after Christ, but then they got me acting kind of half holy, half hood. So I'm like teeter tottering, like, and I'm like, okay, let me keep it together because that is so true. People are like, when are you gonna have another baby? And one of my girlfriends, she's hilarious. She's like, you should tell them, when are you gonna lose weight? or when are you going to drop that baby weight that you have, or something like
Oh
that. But
yeah.
that's rude as hell. So now after you said that, I thought about the Lizzo song, "Feeling Good as Hell."
It is, and it's quite simple as like, I mean, a lot of times people would ask me and I would give like a non-answer, but unfortunately that gives them permission to keep going with the conversation. And you kind of just have to move past that uncomfortableness and, advocate and just say, I'm actually not comfortable talking to you about that, but if that changes, I'll let you know.
Yes, and there's a way that you say it that is, PC, politically correct, but it also lets them know, like, don't ask me that because
Oh
you're
yeah.
totally crossing a line. So I liked how you said, my fertility is not up for discussion. Thanks.
Yeah.
Or my family's really happy right now, and we're in a really great place. So that's like puts a period there, like,
Yes.
done,
End of
move on.
discussion. Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So now that we've talked a little bit about everything, we're definitely going to have a part two because it seems like you and I could really be spilling the tea, but I want to be respectful of your time, Kayla. So let's jump into the CTA, which is the call to action, because you have your podcast and you have so many other things that you have going on the forefront as well as behind the scenes. So let the audience know what your call to action is for them today.
So that's tough. And when I saw that question on your form, I was like I was stuck for a second. Because it's so, I don't know, it's like so multifaceted. And I feel like, to put it simply, I think we just need to have honest discussions about pregnancy, parenting, and postpartum more. And it doesn't stop just there with parents, it's with non parents as well. Because that is how things get more normalized. And that's when you think big picture. That's when family leave, like that. I'm talking big, big picture. Like if people truly understood what happens to you when you have a baby, no matter how you have that baby, I think a lot more respect would be given to families. And that would have huge, huge positive ramifications down the line. Universal childcare, paid family leave across the country, like genuinely. And if people understood that it's not a walk in the park, your maternity leave is not a vacation, giving birth is not easy, no matter how you do it. And it demands attention, care, and respect. And I think if people did those three things, then we down the line would see real legislature happen to make our lives and our kids' lives better.
Yes, and one thing that I want to chime in here because this is a heavy topic, but parents, anyone who's listening, know what your parental rights are. There is a bill where in the US they're trying to get us to get more paid time off, whether it's maternity leave or paternity leave for the dads, because both parents do need a leave of time depending on which parent is the breadwinner or whatever. And in Canada, where my family lives, they get a year off pay, that part. And then understand, like, for those moms, whether you're nursing, and you're breastfeeding, you're pumping or whatnot, does your facility have a nursing room where you could go, and not a bathroom,
Now, I was just gonna
where
say, not a bathroom, not a bathroom stall. Mm-mm.
a nursing room. Another thing is, know what your birth plan is and advocate for yourself when you are in L&D, labor and delivery, because you should be seen and heard because you are the patient. And yes, of course, the doctors, the nurses, and etc., they're going to do whatever they can, but you have rights too. So know what your rights are as a patient. That's very important, because when you don't know what your rights are as a patient, they're going to want to try to shoot you up, dope you up, drug you up, or whatever. And you may not necessarily want the medicine. You may want to do it naturally so you could have that 1 hour uninterrupted skin to skin contact or whatever the case may be. So know that you are your greatest asset and you truly matter. So I want you to take the reins back and pull yourself back. Like the song Chingy said, every time I try to leave, something keeps pulling me back, pulling me back. So I want you to pull yourself back, y'all. And I like to have fun. This is a heavy topic, but Kayla dropped the ball on so many things. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Kayla so she could plug her website, her podcast, so you could learn more about Kayla and what she's doing, because this is not going to be our first conversation. We're going to have another one. So go ahead, Kayla.
Yes, as you were talking, I was like, yeah, I was thinking, yeah, we really do need to have another conversation. I talk all about childbirth rights and consent in my birth class. Actually, that is part of the class. So I right now do two things. So I have the podcast, that's Parent Tell Podcast. It's available on all streaming platforms and on Instagram at Parent Tell. I just hit my 2-year anniversary earlier this month or in early November. Yes, I've been doing it for a while and it's been really going great, normalizing all this stuff that needs to be talked about more. And then my childbirth, if I put on my childbirth educator hat, so that website is notyourmamasbirthservices.com and it's Not Your Mama's Birth Class. So we do have a winter virtual session coming up on January 7th if you're interested in that. So if you're giving birth anytime between March and even early June, that is your time to take the class. And we're talking about the physiology of birth. We are talking about labor and delivery, all of your options. Nothing is excluded. We're talking about childbirth rights, and we're also talking about postpartum and the 4th trimester. And on Instagram, you can find me for there at Not Your Mama's Birth.
Woohoo! And there y'all have it, Kaila Maguire. And you already know the drill if you're following the community. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow. We're on 40 plus audio platforms. You can see this video on our YouTube channel by going to Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp. And lastly but not least, my big ask is for brand sponsors. It is paid sponsors because it does take resources to keep this platform going. So if you want to learn more, reach out to the show by going to Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp at gmail.com. And if you forget, it's the full name of the show at gmail.com. And I want to thank each one of you for being a part of this community. And as my remix to Ja Rule says, where would I be without my supporters? You know I only think about you. I want to thank each one of you for making this show ranked in the top 2% globally out of 2.8 million plus podcasts per the KPIs on www.listennotes.com. So signing out, your hostess with the mostest, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp, and my lovely guest,
Kaila Maguire. Bye.
peace, love, and lots of blessings. Peace out, y'all. Love you.